What's going on, guys? Hey, this is Tim Wright. Welcome back to the series. We are going to dive into the top stories of the Atlanta office market for the past year. Now, if you've been with the channel for a bit, we've done hard hat tours of new developments. We've gone and seen Ponce City Market, and we've interviewed some really cool industry legends. But today, we're doing it a little different. You're gonna hear a lot of me talking. Hopefully, we're gonna make it interesting with some B-roll and some graphs and all that stuff. But that's it. Let's go ahead and dive in. We're gonna talk about three different things. First is the influx of large leases that's happened this past year, Sublease Space, and then the office development pipeline and what's to come. And then if you hang around a little bit longer, we're gonna be talking about opportunities for your company and how you can take advantage of the state of the market right now. So let's go ahead and jump in. The first thing up on our top office stories is the large influx of office leases. This is any lease that's over 75,000 square feet. Now, if you look back at past years, we have 2021, 2022, and 2023. In total, there were 18 new leases above 75,000 feet. Just this past year, in 2024, we had 15. So if that tells you something, we've had almost the same amount of large leases in the past 12 months as we've had in the last 3 or 4 years. So that was a big theme. Something along with that is we're not seeing this big influx of new subleases, companies shedding their space. Now, mind you, these large leases are, they're companies that are right sizing. They might have had 300,000 feet, now they're going down to 200, or maybe they had 150 and now they're at 100. So there's still some right sizing, but the fact of the matter is people are committing to long-term leases. These are 15, sometimes even 20-year long-term leases. A couple I want to highlight. Piedmont Healthcare has been up in Vinings forever. They signed a large lease over at Atlantic Station for almost 180,000 feet. This was a lease that's going to go through 2040, which just blows my mind that it's that long. But this was some BB&T space that was, been there forever. And you probably saw, if you're from Atlanta, driving up and down the interstate, you saw that the BB&T building at Atlantic Station. They got rid of that sign. They put this 271 up on the building just to have a placeholder. But you're going to see a Piedmont Healthcare logo on that building here soon. So that's exciting. Let's go on to the next one. Newell Brands. This was actually a Cushman deal. Some of our team members helped Newell. They had a bunch of different offices. They actually owned a building up in Sandy Springs. They sold the building and they moved everybody into the Queen building. And that was for about 180,000 square feet. So great transaction. They sold their building to an owner user. So that was interesting. Asbury Automotive. So we're seeing, I wouldn't say that was a huge trend, but we started seeing tenants, instead of signing leases, they found distressed office buildings or buildings that aren't gonna lease, and they've just bought them outright and said, hey, this is our office. So that's an interesting thing. Now, the last one I wanna note for large leases that got signed is AT&T. AT&T for years has been cutting office space left and right. They were overly leased, if you want to say that. Something that people don't realize is the old Bell South Tower, the Tower Square that's right next to the Fox, that was almost the reason why they destroyed the Fox. That building, almost 2 million square feet, is entirely empty. It'd be the greatest game of hide and seek you could ever play. You'd never find anybody. But if you drive down the highway and you look at that building, it's an absolute fortress. It's a really big building. Nobody's in it. So that's an example of AT&T cutting back. What I'm getting at, though, is up in Buckhead at Lenox Park, there's this office complex you've probably never been to unless you're in commercial real estate that is kind of off the beaten path. It's its own campus. It was a country club a long time ago. AT&T signed 3 different leases, all for about 100,000 feet. That totals almost 300,000 feet of new leases, or leases that have been brought back to market. So big leases, that's what's happened this year. Let's go on to our next topic here. We've got Sublease Space. This has been something we've talked about a lot with a lot of different clients. Everybody's wondering, how can I find a deal? Subleases are definitely a big place you can find deals. You can find, rates that are way lower than the building. You can find space that's fully furnished, ready to go. A lot of companies that, during COVID, they're like, we're never going back to the office. They just kind of abandon their space. So as far as a user is concerned, this is a great place to look at. What we want to talk about today is what's going on with the inventory, and are we getting new subleases, or what's kind of going on with that? So I'm going to flash up a graph here. This is all the way back to the year 2000. So there was a big spike there. That was probably because of 9/11 and just people didn't want to be in offices. Then it goes back down, and then it kind of flatlines during the 2012 to 2018, 2019 run. Now, right around COVID, you see this big spike. People were like, I'm working remote and not doing this office thing anymore. And then it kind of flatlines, and then it goes right back up. Now, what we think that kind of top out is when the interest rates changed and kind of economic outlook happened. So we got another wave. Now, how this is translated, here in Atlanta, we've put out a couple of these sublease reports, and we'll throw one of those up that we just did for Central Perimeter, but there's still a lot of opportunity for groups out there to find good spaces that are ready to go. But they are running out. There's only a certain amount of term that's left on these, and a lot of the ones that are smaller, meaning 3 to 10,000 feet, those are getting gobbled up. If they're good, everybody wants the nice glass, the nice cool furniture, and they go quick. It feels like it's a repeated theme. The AJC's covered a lot of different things about subleases in and around Atlanta. Go get yourself a sublease. So since the recording of this video, we were given some new information. So Home Depot put up about 600,000 square feet of sublease space on the market up in the Cumberland area. And they said they'd never go back, they never use that space again. The term of that lease was through 2030. And they have started saying, well, we're gonna bring people back and we're gonna take the space off the sublease market. So that's just another little piece of evidence of what people are doing with their space. They're starting to use it again. Even though we've got still a lot of sublease inventory out there, companies every day are coming out with new information on what their return to office mandate's gonna look like. And 2025 is gonna be interesting because it's just, people are back, it's the top of the year, and the market is where it's at. So let's move on from subleases and let's go on to our third and last major story. There's a lot of development happening, a lot of new construction around Atlanta, but the fact of the matter is new office product is pretty few and far between. I'm not gonna name specific buildings in this video, but there are a lot of buildings over on the west side of Atlanta and new buildings in Midtown that are struggling to get leased up. Now, every one of them has a different story, but the reality is the only way for a developer to lease a new building, given the high interest rates and high construction costs, is to just have crazy high rents. So some of the rents that we're starting to see, it's always been around, $40 a foot in Atlanta, started pushing 50, some at 60 now. Now we're getting quotes for high 60s. And users out in the market are comparing, oh, I could be in a really, really nice building, maybe cut my square footage, but my rate is so much higher, and I could go down the street and still get something pretty nice for about $45 a foot. So for some reason, I haven't transacted. Again, every one of these has a different story to it. What we're looking at now, I've got two different graphs. The first one, this is US construction pipeline since 2007. So you see there's a spike there, that's the GFC, and then the pipeline just goes to almost nothing. And then over the last 17 years, we've had this great tear, a lot of new buildings, a lot of new development that's come. And then COVID happened and the things just started trickling down. It's a mix of interest rates and construction costs. Those are two repeated themes that have made new projects difficult. It's both the ground up development and the build outs for specific office buildings. The other graph I'm gonna show you is these are completions and the forecasted completions. These are things that are already under construction. This is across the country. This is indicative of Atlanta, but it's the whole country and just what's going on in the water. And you'll see after 2025, it really gets pretty flat and there's really no end in sight for new buildings. So it's gonna be a while before we see any new speculative office buildings or office product. So a lot of new stuff out there. Could be, the existing developer struggles to lease it up. They sell it on just a discount and a new owner comes in with fresh capital and can turn that asset around. So there's stuff that's up in the air. So that's all I'll say. The office development pipeline it's interesting for what's to come. All right, so those are your three big stories of the year. We've got large leases, we've got subleases, and then the development pipeline. If you're a company out there trying to figure out what to do with your space, obviously our company, we help different firms figure out, okay, where do I want to be? How much space do I need? All the things. Now, here are the opportunities for you. I've mentioned subleases. There's nothing that beats the economics of a sublease. If you find a good one, go for it. The second thing is there are certain owners out there that can perform right now. Those are large REITs. CP Group, I know, is a great one. Cousins is a great one. Highwoods, those are all great owners that can perform and often incentivize new tenants with large packages between TIs and more than market free rent. I don't want to overpromise anything, but there are deals that are better than market that are getting done right now. And if you're willing to commit the time and a longer term, then there's opportunity for you. The last one I'll point out is spec suites. This has been just as much of a conversation as subleases have for our clients. These are spaces, and I'll pop up a couple of photos here. These are pre-built spaces. If you're a group that's going to a building and you find, hey, here's 10,000 feet, but I don't like how it looks now, I want to update it. You'll go through this whole exercise of designing it and pricing it. You'll get pricing back and it's astronomically high. You're like, how can I get $100 a foot in concessions to cover this thing? What ends up happening is these buildings realize, okay, why don't we just go ahead and pre-build it? We know people like a lot of glass and they like natural light. Everybody kind of likes the same thing. So they'll go ahead and pre-build spaces for you. Now, the next level to this is you find buildings that have already set aside the capital to do spec suites, and you find them at the right time and say, hey, you know, instead of 3 offices, can we do 5? Or instead of a conference room over here, maybe we split that into offices. So you can tweak it a little bit. And that's usually the best spot that we've found. You get the concessions that are above market, you get a really nice space, you don't have to sign a 10 or 12-year lease to get it done. So those are a couple opportunities. There's others, of course, but the one thing I'll leave you with as a word of caution, there are owners out there that are struggling to perform right now. What do I mean by perform? If you sign a deal, they promise you tenant improvement allowances and all this sort of stuff. You sign the lease and you get into it, and all of a sudden they send the keys back to the bank and they're in trouble. We do a lot of work to make sure that owners are in a good and healthy spot before we advise clients to sign a long-term lease with them. With that, those are your opportunities as a tenant out in the Atlanta market. Now, if you're curious about diving in a little bit further, you can click on a link. My guy's gonna put up a link for you, and that takes you to a video that talks about all the different submarkets or major submarkets in Atlanta. Each one of these could be its own video, and we've made videos on specific submarkets, but we're gonna do sort of a rewind and look back at 2024 for, let's say, Cumberland Galleria or Buckhead or downtown, significant transactions and all the above. So thanks again for tuning in. I hope this added some value to your 2025. As always, feel free to reach out. We're here to help companies like yourself figure out what they're doing with their real estate and how to save money. So thanks again. See you at the next one.